Jake's voice carried through space on quantum communication waves that reached every ship in the vast alien fleet. He spoke without fancy words or dramatic gestures, just with the quiet dignity of someone who knew his people were about to disappear forever. "We made mistakes," Jake said, his voice steady despite the failing systems around him. "We fought wars over things that seem small now. We hurt our own planet before we learned to take care of it. We sometimes met other species with fear instead of friendship. But through all of that, we kept one thing alive inside us, the belief that we could do better." As he spoke, something impossible was happening across the galaxy. On a dead world called Kepler 442b, a massive crystal structure that had been dark for 12 million years suddenly began to glow. The crystal was larger than a mountain and older than most star systems, built by beings whose names had been forgotten before Earth even existed. Now it hummed with power, responding to words spoken by a human it had never met. Dr. Carter noticed the strange readings first. "Jake," she whispered, not wanting to interrupt but knowing he needed to see this. "Our sensors are going crazy. They're picking up energy signatures that shouldn't be possible. It's like something is waking up all across the galaxy." Jake glanced at her tablet but continued speaking to the alien fleet. "We know we're not the smartest species out here. The Zephyrians can calculate the movement of entire solar systems in their heads. We know we're not the strongest. The Helix Collective can reshape matter with their thoughts. We're not the oldest either. Some of you were exploring space when our sun was just a cloud of gas and dust. In another galaxy far away, beings called the Primarchs stopped their eternal meditation for the first time in millions of years. These were creatures of pure thought who had transcended physical form so long ago that most species believed they were just legends. They existed in a state between dimensions, thinking thought so deep and complex that a single idea might take 1,000 years to complete. But now they paused their ancient contemplations and turned their attention toward a small sector of space where a human was speaking. The alien fleet began to detect the same strange readings that Carter was seeing. Admiral Kethvar received reports from ships across his formation. The energy patterns were unlike anything in their databases. Space itself seemed to be bending and shifting in ways that violated every known law of physics. "Admiral," came a report from Captain Zixandra, her voice tight with worry. "My ship's sensors are detecting massive disturbances in the deep void. Things that have been sleeping in the space between galaxies are moving. The ancient monitoring stations are all coming online at once. Something is responding to the humans' transmission." Jake continued his speech, still unaware of the cosmic attention his words were drawing. "But we learned something that maybe makes us unique. We learned that being small doesn't mean being worthless. We learned that being young doesn't mean being stupid. We learned that consciousness isn't just about how much you can think or how long you can live. It's about how you choose to see the universe. Deep in the void between realities and spaces that existed before the first stars were born, ancient minds began to stir. These were the Eternals, being so old and powerful that they had shaped the basic forces that hold the universe together. They were consciousness in its purest form, intelligence without the need for matter or energy. For eons beyond counting, they had slept in dimensions folded away from normal space and time. But something in Jake's words was reaching them, penetrating barriers that had kept them separate from the mortal universe since its beginning. One by one, they began to wake from their endless dreams and turn their attention toward the small gathering at the edge of creation. Rodriguez called from the engine room, his voice confused and excited. "Commander, you need to see this. Our power readings just went through the roof. It's impossible, but something is feeding energy directly into our systems. Our reactor should have died an hour ago, but it's running better than it ever has." Carter checked her instruments and found readings that made no sense. Their life support systems were not just stable, but improving. The air was getting cleaner, the temperature was perfect, and the artificial gravity was working better than when the ship was new. "Jake, something is keeping us alive. Our systems should have failed by now, but they're actually getting better." Jake felt a strange sensation, as if something vast and invisible was watching him. He continued speaking. his words now reaching not just the alien fleet but intelligences that existed beyond normal space and time. We believe that the universe isn't just random physics and chemistry. It's not just empty space filled with dead matter. It's a place where consciousness can grow out of stardust, where matter can learn to think about itself, where the cosmos can wake up and look back at its own beginning. The first of the Eternals began to manifest in normal space. It appeared as patterns of light that hurt to look at directly, geometry that existed in more dimensions than the human mind could process. This was the Architect Prime, a being of living mathematics whose very presence caused reality to restructure itself around it. Admiral Kethavar had lived for millions of years and had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. He had witnessed supernovas and the birth of new galaxies, but nothing in his long existence had prepared him for what he was seeing now. "All ships," he commanded, his voice urgent. "Begin emergency retreat procedures. We are in the presence of forces beyond our understanding." But the ships couldn't move. They found themselves held gently but firmly in place by powers that treated their most advanced technology like toys. The alien crews watched in awe and terror as space itself began to change around them. Another Eternal manifested, this one appearing as shifting aurora that danced between the stars. This was she who dreams reality, a being so ancient that her thoughts became physical law wherever she appeared. Her presence caused time to flow differently, making moments stretch into eternities and eternities compress into heartbeats. Jake continued speaking, unaware that his words were being weighed by intelligences that had existed since the universe was young. "We refuse to accept that existence has no meaning. We insist on finding purpose even if we have to create it ourselves. We look at a vast, cold, empty universe, and we choose to fill it with love and hope and wonder." The voice between silences manifested next, not as light or energy but as understanding itself. When it spoke, its words were not heard but felt directly by every conscious mind in the area. The small ones speak of purpose in chaos. They find meaning where none was placed. They create hope from despair. This is unexpected. Jake felt the presence of something impossibly vast focusing on him, examining every word he spoke with attention that spanned cosmic ages. He didn't understand what was happening, but he continued his testament to humanity, speaking for his species with simple honesty. Maybe that's our gift to the universe, not our technology or our art or our science, though we're proud of those things. Maybe our gift is our absolute refusal to believe that nothing matters. Even now, at the end, we choose to believe that our time here meant something. Space around the human ship began to bend and twist in ways that hurt to watch. Reality itself was changing as beings older than galaxies gathered to listen to Jake's words. The alien fleet found their instruments failing, unable to measure or understand what they were witnessing. Rodriguez's voice came from the engine room filled with confusion and wonder. "Commander, I don't understand what's happening down here. Our power core should be dead, but it's putting out more energy than it was designed for. It's like something is feeding power directly into our systems from outside." Jake could feel the attention of vast intelligences focused on him, but he continued speaking. "We humans have always believed that the universe has room for everyone, big or small, old or young, powerful or weak. We think consciousness is precious wherever it appears. We think every thinking being has something valuable to offer." The next being to manifest was the Chronarch, an entity that existed across all time simultaneously. It didn't arrive through space but through time itself, appearing as moments that folded back on themselves. Past, present, and future became meaningless concepts in its presence. The alien crews watched in terror as their chronometers began showing impossible readings, time flowing backward and forward at random. Dr. Carter stared at her instruments in disbelief. Jake, according to these readings, were simultaneously existing in the past, present, and future. Our ship is occupying multiple time periods at once. This should be impossible. The Eternal Gardener manifested as living light that wove through the fabric of space itself. This being tended to possibilities like a gardener tends flowers, nurturing potential futures and pruning away dead timelines. Wherever its light touched, New possibilities bloomed in spacetime, creating paths through reality that had never existed before. Admiral Kethvar, despite his millions of years of experience, had never encountered anything like this. His species had survived by knowing when to flee from powers beyond their understanding, but now they couldn't move. All ships, maintain positions, he commanded, though he knew his crews had no choice. We are witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Jake continued his speech, still not fully understanding the cosmic forces gathering around him. We know we made mistakes. We know we caused pain and suffering. We know we sometimes chose war when we should have chosen peace. But we also know that we learned from our mistakes. We grew. We became better than we were. The null god appeared, at the edge of perception, a presence so dangerous that its usual function was to unmake whatever it touched. Normally, contact with the null god meant instant destruction, reality simply ceasing to exist wherever it manifested. But now it held itself back, its destructive nature contained by its own curiosity about these strange small beings who spoke of hope while facing extinction. The alien fleet watched in amazement as their ships began to change. Systems that had been damaged by years of space travel suddenly repaired themselves. Weapons that had been designed for war transformed into tools of exploration and discovery. It was as if the very nature of technology was being rewritten by the presence of these cosmic entities. We believe, Jake said, his voice carrying across dimensions, that consciousness is not an accident. We think the universe wanted to wake up and understand itself, so it created beings like us to be its eyes and ears and minds. We're all part of something bigger than ourselves. The Weaver of Fate spoke, its voice rippling through dimensions that most minds couldn't perceive. We have observed 10 billion species reach for the stars across the span of existence. Most burn bright and die quickly, like sparks from a fire. Others endure by becoming cold and calculating, trading passion for survival. None have spoken. As these small ones speak, Carter's readings showed that their ship now existed in a pocket of space where the normal laws of physics had become optional. Jake, we're not just being kept alive anymore. We're being transformed. Our ship is operating on principles that don't exist in any textbook. The voice of First Light manifested as pure understanding, its presence causing knowledge to flow directly into the minds of everyone present. When it spoke, its words came not as sound but as direct comprehension. Your species has demonstrated something we had not considered possible. You create meaning where none was intended. You find purpose in purposelessness. You insist on hope despite evidence to the contrary. Jake felt overwhelmed by the attention of these cosmic beings, but he pressed on with his message. Maybe our greatest achievement isn't our cities or our spaceships or our art. Maybe it's our refusal to accept that life is meaningless. We insist that love matters, that kindness has value, that hope is worth having even when there's no logical reason for it. The Keeper of Universal Memory appeared as flowing patterns of light that contained the history of every thought ever conceived. This being remembered everything that had ever happened in the universe, every birth and death of every star, every first word spoken by every species that had ever achieved consciousness. In our eternal existence, it declared, we have become efficient. We control reality through will alone. We understand the mathematical foundations of all existence. We have transcended the need for hope because we shape what will happen. We have moved beyond love because we comprehend the chemical processes that create attachment. Rodriguez appeared beside Jake, his face filled with wonder. Commander, you have to see this. The engine room isn't just working anymore. It's become something else entirely. The machinery is alive somehow, growing and changing and becoming more than it was designed to be. Jake looked out at the alien fleet and saw that they too were being transformed. Ships that had been built for trade were becoming vessels of exploration. Warships were turning into rescue vessels. Even the massive dreadnoughts of the most warlike species were changing into something beautiful and peaceful. We never wanted to become gods, Jake said, speaking now directly to the cosmic entities that surrounded them. We just wanted to matter. We wanted our love to mean something, our pain to have purpose, our hope to be justified even if we couldn't. Prove it was. The primordials began to communicate among themselves in ways that transcended language. They shared thoughts that spanned eons, memories that predated the formation of matter itself, concepts that existed in mathematical dimensions beyond mortal understanding. They were trying to understand something they had never encountered before, a species that created meaning through will alone. The judge of final things spoke, its voice carrying the weight of cosmic authority. Curious, they do not seek to survive through power. They do not plead for continuation through logic. They assert purpose through choice alone. They choose to matter regardless of scale or duration. This is novel. Jake felt the ship around him changing, becoming something more than human technology. But instead of fear, he felt a strange peace. If this is our end, he said, then we choose to end as we lived, believing that existence has meaning, believing that consciousness is precious, believing that love and hope and wonder are worth having, even if they don't last forever. The cosmic entities fell silent, their vast intelligences focused entirely on the words of one human who refused to accept that his species' brief existence had been meaningless. For the first time in their eternal existence, beings who had shaped the fundamental forces of reality found themselves learning something new from mortals who were about to die. Jake Morrison stood alone at the big window of his ship. Outside, stars filled the dark space like tiny diamonds scattered on black cloth. He could see other ships floating nearby, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They belonged to aliens from all over the galaxy who had come to watch humanity die. The year was 2387 and Earth was gone, not destroyed by war or accident, but eaten by something called the entropy plague. It was a sickness that killed life at the smallest level, turning everything into dust and emptiness. First it took Earth, then the colonies on Mars and Europa, then the mining stations around Jupiter. One by one, every human world went silent. Now only 43 humans remained alive in the universe. They were all here on this ship called Dawn's Edge, floating at the very edge of known space. Behind Jake, Dr. Lisa Carter checked the machines that kept them breathing. Down in the engine room, Chief Engineer Paul Rodriguez tried to fix systems that were breaking faster than he could repair them. Everyone knew they had maybe 6 hours before their ship died too. Jake pressed his hand against the cold window and looked at the alien fleet. He recognized many of the ship designs from his years in space. The crystal ships of the Zephyrian Empire sparkled like frozen tears. The living ships of the Helix Collective pulsed with soft light, their hulls made from some kind of biometal that grew instead of being built. Even the mysterious Void Walkers were here, beings made of pure energy who rarely showed themselves to physical creatures. "Commander Morrison," a voice came through the communication system. It belonged to Admiral Kethvar, leader of the Galactic Council. His people had lived for over 2 million years and had seen countless species rise and fall. "We have gathered to honor your species in these final moments. Do you have any last words to share with the galaxy?" Jake thought about what to say. How do you sum up an entire species in a few words? How do you explain what it meant to be human to beings who might never understand? He thought about Earth, with its blue oceans and white clouds. He thought about children playing in parks, about lovers walking on beaches, about scientists looking through telescopes at distant stars and dreaming of what lay beyond. "Give me a moment," Jake said into the microphone. He turned away from the window and walked through his ship. In the medical bay, Dr. Carter was taking care of the sick. Many of the crew were dying from the plague, but she never stopped trying to help them. In the recreation room, some crew members were playing cards and telling jokes even though they all knew these were their last hours. In the engine room, Rodriguez was singing an old Earth song while he worked on the broken machines. This was humanity, Jake realized, not the wars or the mistakes or the times they had failed. This was who they really were. People who kept caring, kept hoping, kept trying to make things better even when everything was falling apart. Jake returned to the communication station and opened a channel to the entire alien fleet. "We came from a small blue world that orbited a yellow star," he began. "We were young when we first reached for space. Maybe too young. We made mistakes along the way. We started wars that should never have been fought. We hurt each other and hurt others. But we also did something else. Through the window, Jake could see the alien ships moving closer, as if they wanted to hear every word. Some of the vessels were larger than cities, built by species with technology humans could barely understand. Others were so small they might hold only one being. Creatures who had traveled across the galaxy just to be here for this moment. We never stopped wondering, Jake continued. When we looked up at the night sky, we didn't just see points of light. We saw possibilities. We saw places we wanted to visit, people we wanted to meet, questions we wanted to answer. We knew the universe was vast and we were small, but that never stopped us from trying to understand it. Lisa Carter appeared beside him, her tablet showing the ship's failing systems. Life support was dropping, the engines were dying, and their artificial gravity would fail soon. But she didn't interrupt. She stood quietly and listened as Jake spoke for all of humanity. We learned something important during our short time among the stars, Jake said. We learned that consciousness is not just about being smart or being strong. It's about looking at an infinite universe and still believing that tomorrow can be better than today. It's about hope when everything seems hopeless. It's about love even when you know that love will end. As Jake spoke, something strange began to happen. The ship's sensors started picking up unusual readings from deep space. Energy patterns that shouldn't exist were forming in the void between galaxies. Ancient monitoring stations scattered across known space began detecting signals from regions that had been empty for millions of years. "Sir," Carter whispered, showing him her tablet. "Something's happening. The background radiation is changing. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from everywhere." Jake looked at the readings but didn't understand what they meant. He continued, speaking, unaware that his words were being heard by intelligences far older and more powerful than any mortal species had ever imagined. "We know we're dying," he said. "We know this is the end of our story, but we wanted to leave something behind for whoever comes after us. We wanted to say that we were here, we mattered, and we refused to believe that existence is meaningless. We made our own meaning, we created our own purpose. We chose hope over despair, love over hate, curiosity over fear. In the depths of space, in dimensions folded between the fabric of reality itself, ancient minds that had slept for geological ages began to stir. These were beings that existed before matter condensed from energy, intelligences so vast that galaxies were merely their thoughts made manifest, and somehow, impossibly, the words of one dying human had reached them across the cosmic void. The Void Walkers suddenly began to retreat from the area around Jake's ship, their energy forms flickering with what could only be described as alarm. Captain Zixandra of the Stellar Nomads reported to Admiral Kethvar with worry in her voice. "Admiral, our deep space sensors are detecting movement in regions that have been empty since the universe was young. Something is coming. Something that has been asleep for longer than our oldest myths remember." But Jake continued speaking, unaware of the cosmic attention his words were drawing, unaware that beings older than time itself were turning their vast consciousness toward one small, human ship at the edge of creation. The cosmic beings that had gathered around Jake's ship represented power and intelligence beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were the primordials, the first minds that had emerged when the universe was young and empty. They had watched billions of species rise and fall like waves on an endless shore. They had seen consciousness bloom in countless forms across the span of existence. Yet now they paused their eternal work to listen to the final words of humanity. The architect, Prime, spoke first, its voice causing reality to reshape itself around its words. "We have observed the patterns of existence since matter first condensed from energy. We have witnessed the birth of consciousness in forms beyond counting. We understand the mathematics that govern life and death, meaning and meaninglessness." Jake could feel the weight of cosmic attention pressing down on him, but he continued speaking for his species. "We know we're small. When we first looked up at the stars, we realized how tiny we were compared to the universe. Some people found that scary, but we found it wonderful. It meant there was so much more to discover, so much more to learn." Dr. Carter's instruments were now showing readings that her training told her were impossible. energy patterns that suggested the presence of beings operating on scales comparable to the formation of stars themselves. Jake, whatever these things they're not just watching us anymore, they're actively sustaining us. Our life support should have failed hours ago. The Weaver of Fates began to examine humanity's entire history, viewing their brief but intense journey through time like a tapestry spread before its cosmic vision. It saw their wars and their peace treaties, their hatred and their love, their despair and their stubborn refusal to give up hope. It observed how they faced the extinction of their species not with quiet acceptance but with defiant meaning-making. Curious, the Weaver declared, its voice rippling through dimensions. They do not seek to bargain for survival. They do not offer their knowledge or their resources in exchange for continuation. They simply assert that their existence has had value, regardless of its duration. Jake thought about all the humans who had lived and died before this moment. The scientists who had unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel. The artists who had created beauty that moved hearts across species barriers. The ordinary people who had shown kindness to strangers, who had raised children with love, who had looked at a vast universe and chosen to be hopeful rather than afraid. We learned something important, Jake said, addressing the cosmic entities directly. We learned that size doesn't determine worth. A child's laugh matters just as much as the birth of a star. A moment of kindness between friends has the same value as the collision of galaxies. Consciousness is precious whether it lasts for seconds or for eons. The null god, whose very presence usually meant the end of existence itself, found itself restraining its destructive nature. For the first time in its eternal existence, it wanted to preserve rather than unmake. The paradox of its situation created ripples in reality that the other primordials observed with fascination. Rodriguez appeared beside Jake, his face glowing with an inner light that seemed to come from the cosmic forces surrounding them. Commander, the ship isn't just being repaired anymore. It's being transformed into something entirely new. But it still feels like home somehow. The judge of final things began its evaluation, not of humanity's right to survive, but of the significance of their perspective on existence. It reviewed every moment of human history in an instant, from the first humans who looked up at stars and wondered what they were, to these final humans who faced oblivion and still insisted that their brief time had mattered. In our eternal watch, the judge declared, we have seen species that survived through strength, others through intelligence, some through adaptability. But we have never seen a species that insisted on survival through meaning alone. They do not claim to be the strongest or the smartest. They claim only to matter. The alien fleet watched in awe as space itself began to change around them. The laws of physics became more like suggestions in the presence of these cosmic entities. Time flowed differently, allowing past and future to exist simultaneously. Matter took on new properties, becoming responsive to thought and intention rather than just physical force. Admiral Kethvar, despite his species' millions of years of experience, found himself witnessing something unprecedented. All ships maintain observation protocols, he commanded, though he knew they were all helpless in the presence of such power. We are recording the most significant event in galactic history. Jake continued his testament, feeling the cosmic entities examining every word with attention that spanned geological ages. We made a choice early in our history. We could look at the universe and see only cold, empty space filled with dead matter, or we could see it as a place full of possibilities, where consciousness could emerge and create meaning where none existed before. The voice of First Light spoke, its words arriving as pure understanding rather than sound. Your species has demonstrated something we had not anticipated. You create purpose through will alone. You generate hope from hopelessness. You insist on love despite inevitable loss. This challenges our understanding of consciousness itself. Carter's readings showed that their ship now existed in a bubble of space where entropy ran backward, where broken systems healed themselves, where death itself had become an optional concept. Jake, we're not bound by normal physics anymore. According to these instruments, we could live forever in this space. The primordials began their judgment, but it was not a trial of humanity's worthiness to survive. Instead, they were evaluating whether the human perspective on existence had value that transcended the brief lifespan of any individual species. The chronicler of all that is spoke with the weight of universal history behind its words. In our eternal existence, we have become efficient. We understand the mechanical processes that drive reality. We control matter and energy through will alone. We have moved beyond the need for meaning because we create purpose through power. Jake felt a deep sadness for these cosmic beings, so powerful, yet somehow missing something essential. That's the difference between us, he said gently. You became gods. You gained the power to control everything, but we chose to remain human. We chose to keep believing that love matters even when it ends, that hope has value even when it's not logical, that consciousness is precious even when it's temporary. The keeper of universal memory accessed every recorded moment of human civilization, examining their art, their science, their philosophy, their simple everyday acts of kindness and cruelty. They are inefficient, it observed. They waste energy on emotions that serve no survival purpose. They spend time on beauty that has no practical value. They sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts like honor and love. Yes, Jake agreed. And that's exactly what makes us human. We choose meaning over efficiency. We choose love over logic. We choose hope over evidence, not because it's smart or practical, but because we believe consciousness without meaning is just complex chemistry. The cosmic entities fell into a profound silence, their vast intelligences processing something they had never encountered in their eternal existence. For the first time since the universe began, beings who controlled the fundamental forces of reality found themselves learning from mortals who were about to die. The silence stretched across dimensions, affecting the quantum fluctuations of empty space itself. In that silence, the primordials reached a consensus that would reshape the nature of existence throughout the cosmos. The silence that followed Jake's words was unlike anything the universe had ever experienced. It was not the absence of sound, but the pause of cosmic forces themselves, as if reality held its breath while the primordials contemplated what they had heard. The first to break the silence was the Architect Prime, whose thoughts normally reshaped matter across galactic distances. The small ones have taught us something we did not know existed. They have shown that meaning can exist independent of power. That purpose can be created rather than imposed. That consciousness can choose its own value regardless of external validation. Jake felt the ship around him stabilizing in ways that defied understanding. The failing systems weren't just repaired, but had become something entirely new, technology that responded to intention rather than mere programming. But more than that, he could sense the cosmic entities reaching a decision that would affect not just humanity, but the entire universe. Dr. Carter looked at her readings with wonder. Jake, something incredible is happening. The energy signatures around us aren't just sustaining our ship anymore. They're rewriting the fundamental laws of physics in this region of space. It's like they're preparing to make permanent changes to reality itself. The Weaver of Fate spoke, its voice carrying the weight of cosmic authority. We offer you a choice, small ones. We can preserve your species beyond the reach of entropy. We can grant you immortality, power over matter and energy, freedom from the limitations of mortal existence. You can become like us, eternal and powerful. Jake looked out at the alien fleet, at the billions of beings who had come to witness humanity's end, and then at his own crew. Rodriguez smiled at him from the engineering station, still humming that old Earth song. Carter stood beside him, her tablet forgotten, wonder shining in her eyes. These were his people, flawed and mortal and beautiful in their humanity. Thank you, Jake said, his voice carrying across dimensions to the cosmic entities. But no, the primordials reacted with something approaching shock. In their eternal existence, no conscious being had ever refused an offer of transcendence. The null god, whose nature was to unmake existence, found itself confused by the concept of choosing limitation over power. You refuse eternal life? Asked The voice of first light. You refuse power over reality itself? You choose death over godhood? Jake nodded, feeling peace settle over him like a warm blanket. If you make us immortal and powerful, we stop being human. We become something else, maybe something better in your eyes, but not us. We choose to remain what we are. We choose to end as we lived, as humans who believed that our brief time mattered. The cosmic entities fell silent again, processing this unprecedented response. The judge of final things examined the choice from every possible angle. They prefer authentic mortality to artificial immortality. They choose meaningful ending over meaningless continuation. This is wisdom we had not encountered. Rodriguez called out from his station, his voice filled with joy. Commander, the ship is singing. The engines, the computers, even the walls, are vibrating with something like music. It's the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. The Eternal Gardener began to weave new possibilities into the fabric of space-time, but not the preservation that had been offered. Instead, it planted seeds of something entirely different. If you will not accept transcendence for yourselves, will you accept our gift to the universe itself? Jake felt curious rather than afraid. What kind of gift? The chronicler of all that is spoke with voices that echoed across eons. We will weave your perspective into the fundamental structure of reality, your way of seeing existence, finding meaning in meaninglessness, creating hope from despair, asserting purpose against entropy. This will become part of how consciousness functions throughout the cosmos. Carter gasped as she understood what was being offered. They want to make humanity's approach to existence a basic law of physics. Our stubborn refusal to accept meaninglessness would influence how all consciousness relates to reality. The primordials began their work, not on the human ship but on existence itself. Across the galaxy, subtle changes began to ripple through the quantum foam that underlies all matter. The basic forces that govern reality gained a new quality, a tendency for consciousness to find meaning, for hope to emerge from despair, for love to triumph over entropy. Jake watched through the viewport as the alien fleet began to change. Not their ships or their technology, but something deeper. He could see it in their posture, in the way they held themselves, in the patterns of their communications. They were experiencing something they had never felt before, a sense that their existence had inherent meaning beyond mere survival. "We have one more gift," said she who dreams reality. "We will ensure that your story is remembered. Not just the facts of your existence, but the essence of what you chose to believe. Every species that achieves consciousness will carry within them an echo of humanity's perspective," Admiral Kethavar reported to his fleet, his ancient voice filled with awe. "All ships, we are witnessing the transformation of consciousness itself. The humans have given the universe something we never knew it was missing, the ability to create meaning through choice alone." Jake felt his life ebbing away as the ship's artificial systems finally began to fail. But instead of fear, he felt a deep satisfaction. Humanity would end, but their gift to the cosmos would endure. Every thinking being that would ever exist would carry within them a spark of humanity's stubborn insistence that existence should matter. "Thank you," he whispered to the cosmic entities. "Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for ensuring that our choice to believe in meaning will help others make the same choice." The primordials began to withdraw from normal space, their work complete. But before they departed entirely, the Architect Prime spoke one final time. "The small ones have taught the eternal ones. They have shown us that wisdom is not about power or knowledge or duration. Wisdom is about choosing to create meaning where none was provided." Rodriguez appeared beside Jake one last time, no longer sustained by cosmic forces but glowing with the simple human joy of having lived a meaningful life. "It was an honor to serve with you, Commander. It was an honor to be human." Carter joined them, her instruments finally dark, her scientific mind at peace with mysteries that transcended measurement. "We did something good, didn't we, Jake? We gave the universe something it needed." Jake nodded, feeling the life drain from his body as the ship's systems finally died. "We gave it hope. We gave it the knowledge that consciousness can choose to matter, regardless of power or duration or cosmic significance. The Dawn's Edge went dark for the final time, its crew passing peacefully into whatever comes after life. But across the galaxy, something indefinably human began to influence how every thinking being related to existence itself. The stubborn human insistence that life should have meaning, that love should triumph, that hope should endure even in the face of cosmic indifference became woven into the very fabric of consciousness. The alien fleet watched in reverent silence as the last human ship drifted powerless among the stars, but they also felt something new stirring within their own minds. A sense that their existence had value beyond mere survival, that their choices mattered beyond their immediate consequences. When the last human spoke, even gods fell silent. Not in mourning, but in learning. Humanity's greatest gift to the universe wasn't their technology or their art or their science. It was their absolute refusal to accept that existence was meaningless, their stubborn insistence that consciousness should matter, that love should triumph, that hope should endure. The last human spoke, and the universe listened, learned, and was forever changed. Across the cosmos and the minds of beings yet to be born, the echo of humanity's voice would whisper the same eternal message. You matter, your choices have meaning, and hope is always worth having, even when there's no logical reason for it. The gods had fallen silent, and in that silence the universe had learned to hope.